This podcast is about introducing our fans to the animals, plants, and other products that we work with at Josh's Frogs. It's an opportunity to paint a picture of our hobby that is refreshing. We want you guys to be successful with the animals that you're keeping, and we want our hobby to grow ethically and sustainably into the future. Hello and welcome to the Josh's Frogs podcast. I'm here with Austin again. We're going to talk about milk frogs, but before we do that, I just want to let you know that the Josh's Frogs podcast is brought to you by Josh's Frogs. We're your one-stop shop for all your reptile, amphibian, and pet bug needs. So not only do we sell captive bred animals, but we sell everything you need to take care of those animals. So substrates, live plants, terrariums, lighting, all that kind of stuff. Then we also carry all the feeder insects you need to take care of those animals. So check us out. We got a lot of how-to articles and blog articles and a lot of videos to check out as well. We want you to be successful with what you're keeping. So check us out, joshsfrogs.com. And without further ado, welcome, Austin. Are you ready to talk about milk frogs?
Yes.
Awesome. Great. So if somebody hasn't listened to some of the other episodes, give us a rundown. Who are you? How long you been at Josh's Frogs? And what do you currently do?
So my name is Austin, and I've been at Josh's Frogs for over 11 years now. It'll be 12 come December, so that's exciting. I am currently the curator of tree frogs and toads, and that basically just means that I do all of the amphibians that aren't dart frogs. We also have axolotls. We've talked about branching off into other newts and salamanders and stuff. But yeah, not just tree frogs and toads. There's many other species of frogs that fall into that category.
Yep. Now, give us a number, like how many different species are you guys working with right now? Could you give us a ballpark? How many you guys are working with?
I want to say it's over 25, but I don't think 50.
Okay.
In that range.
All right. So a few dozen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Talk to us a little bit about day to day. What are you doing all day long? Like what's a week look like for you and your team? What does it look like?
So a lot of my stuff is just managerial at this point. So I'm managing a team, and my team, I'm helping to facilitate them being successful. So coordinating and scheduling the breeding events, making sure that we have space in our tadpole room so that we can do the breeding events. And just working with everybody on the team to make sure that they know what they're supposed to be doing on a day-to-day basis.
Cool. All right, today we're going to talk a little bit about milk frogs. Can you describe what is a milk frog and maybe compare and contrast it to some other frogs that are common in the hobby, but what's a milk frog?
I find it interesting that you're one of those people that says milk.
I'm from the Midwest.
Yes.
So.
But milk frogs, they're a tree frog. So they have an arboreal lifestyle. They're found up in the canopy. They are an interesting one. They're not very similar to many other species of tree frog that you would see, like your red-eyed tree frogs. They're not green. Although a lot of the descriptions that I was looking up just to like refresh my memory on them describe them as khaki green or like light green. But I've always looked at them and thought, oh, that's a blue frog.
Yeah.
So they're a blue frog. I guess in certain lighting they can get kind of like that green coloration. But they have this excess of, you've heard of bilirubin, I'm assuming.
Yep.
There's biliverdin, which is also something that is produced in like your liver and gallbladder, but it's like a greenish pigment, so that causes all of their muscles, blood, and bones to be blue.
Wow.
Yeah, I have some babies behind me, which you can't see because this is a podcast, but we'll have video and stuff to go along with this, so check that out for sure. There's some babies, and you can see their long bones really clearly, and they are blue.
Yeah.
So,
and inside their mouth.
And inside their mouth. So when they
eating,
open their mouth, and their toe pads are really blue as well.
Yeah.
But they're a more robust frog, so they're kind of like stockier than your typical tree frog. They have really big hands and toe pads to go along with that. They have 2 vocal sacs instead of just the typical one that a lot of tree frogs will have. And they come out the side of the head. And some species of milk frogs, it's comical when they're calling because they almost touch at the top behind their heads. They look like these big kidney beans that just like expand out of the head. And they have like gray or blackish barring typically across their backs. But that can vary. They can be connected. Most of them have like a triangle on their head between their eyes and like extending to the point to their nose.
Cool. Now, why are they called milk frogs? What makes them, gives them that name?
So they are toxic, and they secrete a toxin that is milky white. But it is not milky consistency. It is extremely sticky and annoying to get on your hands. And so we always recommend wearing gloves. Usually the ones in captivity aren't really, they don't secrete the toxins when you pick them up.
Yeah.
If you can ever get your hands on any wild caught frogs or frogs that haven't been handled very much, they do get stressed out when you pick them up and they're like, what's happening? You're going to eat me. And so they just like start secreting this toxin. It has an odor to it, and I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah.
But if you smell it, it's like, oh, that's weird. Not something you'd want to put in your mouth. But yeah, so they get their name from the milky toxin they secrete. Another common name is the Mission goldeneye frog. They have golden eyes, and there's like a cross so going from the top to the bottom and on each side, left to right. Through the pupil.
Cool. And you talked a little bit about different morphs. Like how many morphs are there and what's available in the hobby right now?
So morph-wise, it's kind of just like pattern on their back. Species-wise, there's over a dozen different types of like milk frogs. We have what we dubbed the chocolate milk frog just because they're brown.
Yeah.
But they're the Suriname goldeneye frog. There's some in like northern South America going into Central America. Trachycephalus, what was it? I just had it. Typhonius. There's a lot of other ones. There's one that looks very similar to the milk frog that's in Ecuador that's got a pinker tint to its eyeball.
Oh,
and
wow.
they do look a little bit more green from the pictures I've seen of them.
Huh.
But yeah, the milk frogs are your typical bluish, light blue coloration on their back, gray when they come out of the water, and they have like a beige golden eye.
Oh, cool. Yeah. All right, now tell us a little bit about setting these guys up. Is it similar to how you would set up a red eye or a white tree frog? Like, what do you think of in terms of like setting them up long term?
So you can definitely set them up bioactive like a red-eyed tree frog, white tree frog. Basically the same thing as a dart frog enclosure, but you have a screen top and a bit stronger leaves and plant life.
Cool.
These are heavy frogs, and they will break some of the smaller things that we work with. Some of the more dainty plants. I wouldn't put any ferns in their enclosure.
Yeah.
But we at Josh's Frogs like to keep them over water, which is pretty similar to their natural habitat. So they are living in tree holes that collect a lot of rainwater. And so they're up in the canopy most of the time and kind of really, really close to that water source. They will breed in those pools as well, which is really impressive because they lay like 2,500 eggs at a time.
Wow.
And you would think that's way too much for these small pools of water that are kind of just like potentially 30 feet up in the air. But they are really cannibalistic. So they kind of take care of that themselves. We don't allow that to happen in captivity. We don't really like to see the cannibalism. It does happen. You'll see, oh, that was a straggler and it died, and then its brothers and sisters just devoured it. They really, really like protein. So as tadpoles, we give them things like bloodworms. Some of the rapace diets are really high in protein, and then our tadpole diet also has a lot of protein in it too. They also really like spinach, boiled spinach.
Interesting.
Which is a fun one.
So you're talking a little bit about breeding. How long until they're sexable, and like how do you tell the males and females apart?
So it's usually around a year and a half. Males and females are really tricky. The males don't really show their vocal sacs very well. Like you can kind of manipulate them, and they kind of tuck them in their shoulder. space. But you can tell, like, they have like this darkish blue flappy thing that kind of is just hanging off both sides of their head, where their neck is. And females are kind of just a bit rounder, but if you're feeding your milk frogs really well,
Yeah.
they're going to look pretty similar. The max size is really similar for both of them, and there's a lot of overlap in the range in the sizes. So your average milk frog is going to be the same size as a male and female.
Gotcha.
But yeah, the vocal sacs is a good one. I believe they have nuptial pads as well, so you can check their thumbs, the inner digit, and they'll have like a dark patch on there during breeding season, but it's not always present.
Yeah. Yep. You talked about size. How big is a milk frog?
So they can be anywhere from like 2.5 to 4 inches. 4 inches is like really, really big, though.
Cool.
Like I've only ever seen a couple of milk frogs that size.
Cool.
And I want to say that they're more of the ones that are probably closer to F1 wild caught generations, as opposed to some of these longer term captive lines. Typically, what you see is things getting smaller than their wild counterparts in captivity.
Yeah. Yep. Back to breeding. How do we initiate that breeding? How do we get them going? Is there anything we're doing special to get them to drop eggs?
So a lot of times they'll just do it on their own. When we keep them over water, we kind of just let the males and females do what they want, and males will call. If a female's interested, she'll go to him, and then they'll go into amplexus and lay eggs. We have had success with putting them in a rain chamber, raining on them for a couple of days, and then you get eggs fairly quickly that way as well. But yeah, just allowing them to have a decent amount of access to water, and that could be anywhere from like an 1818 to a 40 breeder.
Cool.
They'll lay in either of those. The 40 breeder did yield significantly more eggs, though, so I don't know if the female is consciously like, okay, this is the total capacity of this water
Interesting.
source. Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Talk a little bit about temps and humidity. Like you mentioned a screen top. What are you looking for as far as humidity, and what kind of temps are you looking for?
So humidity, we don't really worry too much about it because we're keeping them over water. But if you're keeping them in a bioactive enclosure, you would want to have it anywhere from 50 to 70%, and definitely providing a water bowl that they can fit their whole body into. They're fine with deeper water. They're pretty good swimmers, so you can give them a water dish that's larger than you would for like a red-eyed tree frog or a White's tree frog that might not necessarily need it. Like our White's tree frogs, we typically just give one of those like plant saucers that collect the water underneath your plant pots.
Cool. Temperature wise,
temperatures are in like the mid to high 70s. They're in the Amazon, like most of northern South America, so it's pretty warm there all the time. High 70s is your average day-to-day temperature, and they're not out in like direct sunlight. They're hiding in these tree holes during the day, and so it doesn't need to be like 85, 90 degrees in some of the hotter times because they're not actively searching for those temperatures.
Yeah, cool. Now, when people are taking care of Amazon tree or milk frogs or other tree frogs, like what are some common issues that people have with their frogs that they should be keeping an eye out for? Like what are the issues that come across our help desk?
So typically one of the biggest ones is, hey, I got my frog. I tried to feed it when I first got it, and it's not eating. Usually it's just like they're stressed from being in a box for 24 hours. And yeah, they were in the dark. They potentially had a rough trip. Usually what we recommend is to put them into an enclosure that's lined with damp paper towel that's smaller than your permanent enclosure. It could be like one of those 99-cent shoebox things from Walmart. That's totally fine and okay for a couple of days. They're not going to be super stressed out by being confined to that. It'll kind of give them the ability to calm down and acclimate. You can watch them a lot better because it's see-through. There's no plants and stuff blocking your view, because if you put them in their enclosure, they're going to hide, and then you can't see what they're doing. And you can also better count crickets in and out, so you'll be able to see, okay, I put 5 crickets in. There's 2 crickets in the morning. They ate 3 of those crickets. And you can also see their poop a lot better.
Cool. All right. You talked a little bit about handling them and how you guys are, how in captivity they tend to be less fearful of that handling. What are some guidelines for handling your milk frog? And
So you definitely want to wear gloves just because of the potential for that toxin to be secreted. Like if they jump away and you have to grab them and hold on to them a little tighter than just like kind of letting them sit on your hand, they could start doing the secretions. And you don't want that on your hands if you have cuts or anything. I'm assuming it would sting really bad, but it's not going to cause any long-term effects. Definitely don't put it in your eyes or your mouth. But yeah, always wear gloves when handling frogs. It's safer for them in general. And also the benefit for some of the more toxic ones that can secrete stuff. It'll protect you as well.
Yeah. All right. Anything else when somebody's considering like, hey, should I be getting a milk frog, or should I be getting a red eye, or should I be getting a white? Anything else that you would explain to them about milks that would make them a little bit different, or a reason why they should consider or not consider them?
They're definitely the most blue of those options. So I know blue is a very popular color. I know Azurius dart frogs are one of the most popular dart frogs that we sell, and it's because they're blue.
Yeah.
Red eyes are great. They're green. White tree frogs are teal. So if you're considering like the coloration of things, they're not as loud in my opinion as like the white tree frogs. And red eyes can be pretty loud too if it's raining or you're getting some of those pressure shifts going on. They have this call that's more of like a and it's not super loud. So if you're not in the room with them, you're not going to hear it. I wouldn't put really any nocturnal frog in my bedroom and have like a tank set up permanently in there just because of the potential of calling.
Yeah. Cool. All right, we're going to do a lightning round, which we've done these questions before, so you may or may not remember them from past episodes. But hopefully some of your answers have changed over time, so we'll see. All right, if money and space were no issue, what's the next pet that you would have in your house?
I've been thinking about this, and I've done a few shows where I've seen some really cool king snakes. And king snakes don't get huge, and they're not like very space demanding as far as like there's some large boas and other big pythons that would take a lot more space. So one of those like fancy king snakes.
Cool. All right, besides Josh's Frogs, who's another business or another breeder that's doing really cool things? Like, who would you like to give a shout out to? Either a tool that you use or something you've seen at a show. Like, who's doing cool things in our hobby?
I'm really liking the new Exo-Terra. I guess they're not new anymore. They've been out for several years, but like the frog vivarium things that have like a built-in hole in the bottom.
Yeah.
So I don't have to drill glass. That's super nice.
And so that we don't crack as many tanks.
My boss is pretty good at fixing those tanks and the cracks and stuff and resiliconing and sealing everything, but I'd prefer not to break a tank if I can help it. And if they'll do it beforehand, perfect.
All right, of all the animals and all the plants in the world, like what's kind of the coolest one right now that you think of?
Those flowers that smell like a corpse are pretty cool. That only bloom like once a year. Those are once every however many years.
I think we had three of them in Michigan.
Yeah, they travel. People travel to go and smell rotting corpses.
Yes. So anything to attract the bugs.
It's an ethical corpse.
That's right. All right. What did you want to be when you were a kid?
It was definitely some sort of biologist. I don't think I knew that herpetology was a thing until I think it was like the series of unfortunate events. Like the second book in that series, I want to say, was they went and were being adopted by a herpetologist. And so I was like, wait a minute, that's an actual job that you can have. So yeah, it's pretty much been consistent herpetology. Other animals have had my fancy throughout like my education and stuff, but it's always kind of just been like I was always that kid that was out flipping logs and trying to find salamanders and frogs and stuff. So
cool. All right, you got an hour of free time. What are you doing with it? And no one's bothering you. The kids, the wife are gone.
Oh,
what are you doing?
I was gonna say just probably going on a walk because that's a fun thing to do with the family. Man,
what's your
probably just like playing a video game that I haven't had time to in a while. Like,
Okay.
I have a backlog of gifts that I've been given that just I've been ignoring for a while, and I feel kind of bad about it because they were gifts.
You should feel bad about that.
Okay, I am.
All right, last question. You have a bunch of people listening to you. What's one piece of advice, either about life in general, about keeping animals, piece of wisdom that you'd like to give to us while everyone's listening?
This is probably something that I need to work on and something my wife would say I need to work on, but just like active listening. Listen when people are talking to you. And Celeste, yes, I am aware that I am not the best at this.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks a lot, Austin, for dropping some wisdom on us, explaining how to keep milk frogs and bringing those creatures alive for us.
Absolutely.
Check out some of Austin's other work. He does a lot of lives for us and other videos. You can see over the course of the last 12 years, he's done quite a few videos for us, done some writing for us and some blogs and stuff like that as well too. So check that out, and make sure that you check out the Milk Frog page and check out a little bit more about those guys. So without further ado, thank you, Austin, and thank you for listening to the Josh's Frogs podcast. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you enjoy this content and want to stay up to date, make sure to like, subscribe, and follow us across social media. We always want to bring you the best content, so let us know what you think in the comments. And for all your reptile and amphibian needs, be sure to check us out at joshsfrogs.com. We have an amazing selection. Until next time, stay curious, stay froggy, and keep exploring.